What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo MLB Live Before Lock show. I'm Dave Loughran. With me, as he is every single Monday, T. McBee, Terry McBride. Happy Labor Day, everybody. Terry, you having a good one?
Yeah, you know what? Been talking a lot of baseball. Hit the slate many times so far. So now for something completely different for everybody out there. But yeah, it's been a good lazy kind of Labor Day weekend. Not your usual typical going out to barbecues and stuff. What about you?
Nice. Yeah, I do a lot with the neighborhood around here, which I'm pretty fortunate about. You know, I never smoke. Do you ever smoke anything? Not weed or crack, but like ribs and brisket.
Yeah, I knew the direction you were going. No, I haven't not personally done it. I've enjoyed it, but not done it myself.
I did it for the first time yesterday. It's a bit of a process, but it's pretty fun, and it came out edible. I'd give it a solid 5 of 10. So, you know, that's a win. That's a win for your first time smoking something. I don't know. Maybe you guys in chat can give me some good tips. I used the 3-2-1 technique. I don't know. It was cool. Nevertheless, we've got 6 games to jump into. We're going to run straight into NBA Live Before Lock as well. We're going 45 minutes here. And then we got the NBA Live Before Lock crew coming up after us. That will be, who do we got on? EMAC. Nope, that's wrong. Jason, Floyd, and Rayen. So they'll take you up until that 6:30 lock time. We got about 42 minutes, Terry. And I figure because there's only 6 games, because we're on a 45-minute, somewhat limited window here, I say we just go game by game, break this down now that we have lineups and make it work that way.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, let's kick it off with Tampa Bay and the Washington Nationals. Max Scherzer, Charlie Morton towing the rubber for their respective teams. Scherzer's getting 53% ownership right now. Our top pitcher tool, which is pretty awesome, along with our ownership and our top stack tool. I think you guys will love them. If you're already members, subscribers, you know what I'm talking about. Has him with a 39.3% top pitcher probability that he finishes within the top 2 pitchers on DraftKings. You have to roster 2, so we've got 2. 15.6% top pitcher probability on a single pitcher site like FanDuel. Let's start it off with him. Like I said, Terry, 51% ownership. Currently the highest projected owned pitcher across the board.
Yeah, so look, it's Max Scherzer. I think he deserves it. I think I'm pretty happy to pay the price no matter how I'm crunching, whether I'm doing it with my numbers, Alex's numbers, my home run model, no matter what it is, Max is coming up as my top owned guy. So it would be a matter of me having to go in there and kind of manipulate it, cut his ownership deliberately in half. I don't know that I want to do that with Max Scherzer. I trust Max Scherzer. I trust him to go out there, put up a solid strikeout game. So I'm not really worried about anything here with this team. The Rays strike out around the middle of the league, but, you know, it's Max, so he's going to put up a probably pretty dominant game. Great pitch against right-handed hitters, just absolutely dominant slider that he uses to whiff right-handed hitters, sits him down constantly. Rays are 14th in the league, 37 home runs versus righties this year, 189 ISO, and a 111 WRC plus against righties. So they do create runs at a rate above average against right-handed pitchers. They do have some good lefty bats in that lineup. But again, it's Max Scherzer. That's the only thing I really need to keep coming back to. Projects well for me. Alex has him up top. I'm not worried about getting to him.
Yeah, me neither. Last time out, I forget who it was. It might have been you and myself. I can't remember. It might have been Josh and me. We discussed some trepidation about that matchup against the Philadelphia Phillies, just given their very low K rate against righties and the ability to hit for quite a bit of power. The Tampa Bay Rays, and by the way, I think the ultimate consensus was even in that spot, well, you kind of still have to play them. Similar to what you're saying right now, Terry. And that was a slightly bigger slate. This is a 6-game slate. I don't know. I look at it and I see Tampa Bay as a pretty talented team, but also one that is striking out, I think, at the 10th highest clip against righties on the season. Yeah, tied for the 10th highest clip against righties on the season. And all in all, they've been a good offense. They haven't been a spectacular offense. And yeah, as you pointed out in the top pitcher tool, if you're coming in with like a 40% top 2 pitcher probability, I can get there as well. On the other hand, Charlie Morton getting no ownership whatsoever, 0.1% as it currently stands. And we can get into the reasons why right now. Like I said, 0.1% ownership, 5% top pitcher probability. That's FanDuel. Top pitcher probability, 9.8% on DraftKings. Morton was sidelined on the injury list for around 3+ weeks. And in his return, he pitched 2 scoreless innings, only 36 pitches. That's definitely a concern, Terry. I don't know how we'd feel confident with him getting enough work to pay off a $7,300 price tag.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. One of the notes I saw was that he's probably only going 3 or 4 in this one and then handing off to the bullpen. So I don't really love the spot for Morton. I'm not really going to have much of him. I might, at that low price on DraftKings, maybe like a very small share just as a weird, oddball SP2 at 7,300, but it's kind of a lot to do that with. I was talking about it, I think, on the early bird with Jason last night. We didn't have the pricing for DK yet. If that had been like 62, 55, one of those type opener type prices, I could get into Charlie Morton at that price with his strikeout ability, despite the diminished velocity we've seen, despite a couple other wonky things going on with him. But I just don't like it at 73, so I would really be very wary about doing it all. Wouldn't touch him on FanDuel, I don't think, one pitcher site. So just really not in play for me, and I think we can get to some of these Nationals bats for sure. No Juan Soto kind of diminishes the lineup there, but we've got Hector Robles back down at the bottom of the lineup too, takes a little bit of the gleam off of that one as well. You've got Adam Eaton hitting leadoff, Trey Turner. They get Brock Holt and Kurt Suzuki after that. Suzuki's a bat I like, but he's getting kind of owned. So maybe I'm getting away from the National stack with the most recent update a little bit here, just looking at how the ownership has changed.
Yeah, and their total dropped from 4.3 all the way down to 4.1. They're not really big favorites in this spot. I'm not saying I would expect them to be, minus 200 on the money line or anything, Terry, but they've come down since the last time I updated my spreadsheet from, I think, minus 130, then minus 118. They're at minus 110 now. So, yeah, it's with Scherzer on the mound too.
Yeah, that's pretty mind-boggling.
It's crazy right now. Yeah. I guess we could factor in Tampa Bay's bullpen. No slouch here, but I am a little bit surprised that Scherzer is that small, or that Scherzer is that small of a favorite. It honestly has me inclined to bet Tampa Bay. Forget a DFS, not taking a DFS lean on this, but this is moving pretty heavily in the opposite direction. It makes it interesting. But yeah, it's funny how, because it's nice to think your way through things while we're doing these shows sometimes. And you kind of just thought yourself through that process right there, seeing the updated lineup, having an opinion, and then changing it based on what's coming in. And you got to be able to adjust. And I think that's kind of what we just saw you do on air.
Yeah, absolutely. The Nats are a stack. I think I wrote them up in one of the columns. I definitely talked about them on both shows earlier. They were a team that I was kind of on in this spot. And that lineup and the ownership on the top half of that lineup is definitely giving me second thoughts about that. So I'm going to not remove them completely from my crunch because there is some good value in there. The pricing is pretty good and cheap. But I'm going to look through that lineup and really make sure I'm playing who I want to play and not playing the over-owned guys in too much. Eric Dame's in there. Maybe you can get to it only 10%, decent home run upside. But I don't really like the looks of just how that comes together, even for stacking purposes, like the guys we'd be putting together that would be in tightly correlated spots. So it's not great.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. There's no question. Top stack probability. Talking about our tools over here at Awesemo, you've got Washington at 6.3%, 8.3 aggregate ownership. So, they're 9th out of 12 teams, or 8th out of 12 teams in top stack probability. Do you have any interest in, I have to ask, not a huge slate, Tampa Bay bats? Anything stand out to you here?
So I think just for a little bit of leverage against a super high-owned pitcher, Scherzer's going to be like 35% plus on FanDuel. He's going to be, like we talked about, 50% plus on DK. We know there are some good lefty bats in that lineup. We can probably build some small stacks there. Not many of them, but a couple, just for some leverage against a really highly owned pitcher. I think we can get away with that. But again, you're dealing with a team that people are kind of doing that. So the bats that we would want are going to be fairly highly owned. Just looking at Meadows, he's over 25% on DK. Lowe, Wendell are getting up there. So maybe look into more of the middle, like around a G-Man Choi, a Yoshi Tsutsugo, and a Kevin Kiermaier. Grab a little 3-man in there. But again, you're talking about going up against Max Scherzer, and now you're talking about their secondary bats against Max. So not great.
All right, let's keep this one moving. Kansas City and the Cleveland Indians. It is looking like we have some potential rain here. Also super humid, like 92% humidity in Cleveland right now at Progressive Field. That's got to be great. But yeah, keep an eye on rain. It looks like this probably gets played even if they have to delay it. But I'm no meteorologist. I'm just telling you what the hourly and the radar look like. We can get into this one now. Cleveland, big favorites here. Zach Plesac on the mound. Brad Keller on the bump for the Kansas City Royals. Right now, let's see, with the update, the Indians are minus 208. They have a 4.8 total. Royals at 3.3. I guess we could start by talking about Zach Plesac. He's getting quite a bit of ownership, coming up close to, flirting in that 30% range. On FanDuel, however, he's getting nothing. He's north of $10,000. And there's just not a lot of meat left on the bones there, Terry, when you're paying 10 plus K for Zach Plesac, despite the fact that he has had a very, very solid 2020 campaign. Tell me it's not wild to see this huge disparity in pricing. $7,600 on DraftKings, which is, it's hard to argue that he's not pretty underpriced, especially against the Royals team that, I saw this yesterday. Their odds to win the World Series are plus 40,000. Yeah, reasonable, right?
Right.
And then a 10-3 on FanDuel, huge difference in pricing.
Yeah, that one really, really stuck out when I was looking through the pricing and talking this slate through. Can't really justify it on either one. I think he should be somewhere in like the 9 range probably on both sites. But I think it's something to take advantage of on DK. And if you can get him in on FanDuel, I don't hate it. The ownership edge isn't really, really there. He's like 9.8 on probability of success and 9.6 on ownership. So it's like right about level. I'd love to see that a bit of a different. Oh, I'm sorry. That was Zach Gallen. So he's 10-2 and 8. So you're getting a little bit of edge. Not a lot. I'd like to see it more like half if you're paying up that much. But still, it's a big price for Plesac over there. He's pitching really well, like you said. The Royals are 11th versus righties with 40 home runs this year. 21st, though, in ISO at 156. 25th in WRC plus, 17% below average. So not a good offense, like you said, not getting much of an implied team total. I think we can get him. He's got a great slider and a great changeup. Gives up like no contact, no power on either pitch. A sub 1x ISO on both of those pitches. So very, very good. Career 20.6% strikeouts. So we're seeing more strikeouts from him this year. So I like the spot for Plesac. I like it a heck of a lot better on DK at 7,600 though.
Man, what a crazy price! I can't get past that. It's hard to get away from it. And were you a little bit surprised? Let me see if we have another update rolling in here. Always want to make sure we get the most recent update on the site. Yes, it looks like we did. His Plesac actually came down in ownership. Were you surprised that he's sub 30%, or would you think that Plesac would be less than that, more than that, or is this just about right on him? 4th highest owned pitcher right now on DraftKings.
I would actually expect him to be higher, to be honest.
Me too.
I mean,
Me too.
At that price. Maybe it's just name recognition. He'd been out for a little while with the COVID thing, and people he's not a big name yet, so maybe just the public isn't totally aware of him. But yeah, I think that's a killer price on him, and I expected a lot more ownership.
Yeah, I did as well. Talk to me about Brad Keller. Anything that stands out to you? He's kind of been he's been somebody that we haven't hated getting to just because the guy gives up virtually no power whatsoever. On the season, you're still looking at 0 home runs allowed for Brad Keller. He's striking batters out at 21%. The numbers aren't terrible, 4.27 xFIP, but in this spot, it's troublesome. Not to mention that the win equity here has got to be pretty low given how big of dogs they are. It's baseball. Anything can happen. But I think the odds are kind of stacked against him here. What do you say?
So Keller was a guy I was kind of eyeballing, and it's based a lot around that ability to limit power, ability to kind of limit upside. You mentioned the ability to just cut down home runs. In 333 and 2/3 career innings, he's only allowed 22 home runs, which is just dynamite. It's a 0.59 home run per 9. You mentioned the whiffs. They're up a little bit. The strikeouts are up a little bit. 17.2 for the career, but low 20s this year. So you're getting a little bit more strikeout out of him. He's a guy who really, really relies on getting ground balls and limiting hard contact. He's 37.8% hard contact, which would be among the top 25 if he qualified in the innings that I was looking at there. So very good at limiting the contact. Indians are just 33rd, just 33 home runs against righties, so 19th in the league in power against righties. 147 ISO is 25th in the league against righties, and a 91 WRC plus. So they're actually kind of underperforming against righties. They're striking out more than they normally do too. You pointed that out to me for the first time this year, and they're still doing it. 24.2% strikeout against righties. So I kind of think Keller's more in play maybe than he looks on our top pitcher board. I was thinking he might be up a little bit, but I love the ownership on him. He's getting untouched really on both sites. So even if you just get a little bit of him in your life, you're getting some edge. And I'm going to have probably more than that.
Okay. So Keller's on the board for you today. I like it. I have no problems with it. The fact that, okay, you know he's not going to get crushed for home runs. I'm sure there will be a game here or there where it happens. I remember saying, I think 2 years ago, second half of the season where he started getting a lot of opportunity, that it was unsustainable. But I don't know. Maybe it's not. Terry, you want to talk about an enigma. What? The guy has not allowed a single home run, and it seems like he never does. So if he can give me, he's never going to be a strikeout per inning guy, but if he can strike you out at 21% Ks, kind of everything that you just mentioned as well, it's not crazy to think that he does have some value so long as his ownership stays low and his price stays low. I think we could both agree that as Brad Keller's price begins to tick up in the event that it does, and his ownership begins to rise, he becomes a whole lot less appealing, just given the relatively low ceiling here. But he's had a very high floor. Outside of one game, he's been very productive. He's only gotten rocked in one single start, and that was the one where he was more popular than in any other start this season.
Of course. And since I've spoken about him now on 3 shows, and I think in a column that today, if he's going to give up 3 home runs, it's happening today. So, but I really like, even if you're looking just at based on price, stick Keller at 67 and Gaussman, who I like as well, who we'll probably get to in a little bit, at 61 as your 2 pitchers on DK. And then you can do anything you want with bats. Those prices double pay down a pitcher with 2 plays that I think are in play. I don't think that's completely nuts, and there's tremendous savings there.
Sure. He's allowed 6 runs on the season. 5 of them came in one start.
There you go. Pitching well. And he's a guy who just doesn't hit the board for a lot of people. Like you said, it's enigmatic. It's not something that I was expecting or really even was aware of until I started poking around at him. And he's just kind of emerged for me as kind of a sneaky option.
Any bats on either side of this one? It's kind of a tough spot. Even though Cleveland's got a decent total, it's hard to pick on Brad Keller.
Yeah, and it's because of that same thing, his ability to limit the runs and limit the upside. We can't count on some home runs here. So I get to that Cleveland stack quite a bit, particularly the top 5 guys, around the horn in the infield, plus Franmil that I talk about constantly. The pricing is kind of prohibitive on Ramirez and Lindor there, over 5,000, but you can kind of work with some of the other guys. So maybe, particularly if I'm rolling a decent amount of Keller, I might throw a couple Indian stacks into the mix just to protect myself against him getting completely lit up. But it's not a stack I'm going to get to a lot. And then on the other side, don't really see much in the Royals. I'll click over to the stack. Yeah, bottom rank stack on both sites. Not getting any ownership edge on DK. So out of play completely for me on DK. Tiny ownership edge on FanDuel. But again, you're talking about the bottom ranked team, and I like pretty much everybody else better than them.
Man, I tell you, the ownership on Cleveland too, the aggregate ownership is way higher than any other team. So that's kind of interesting. 16.5%, 10% top stack probability on DraftKings specifically. So you pointed that out. Let's talk about Toronto and the New York Yankees. Before we do, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sponsor of MLB Live Before Lock. Man, if you're not gearing up yet, it's almost here. Thursday, 3 days away. 3 days away until the NFL season commences, and then 6 days till the real start of the season, 13th of September. Going to have some monster contests over there at Yahoo. Get stoked for it. They got CSV uploads now. They got CSV edits. Really, everything that you need to really be able to enjoy a site and win some good money over there as well. I still think there's more, even with the CSV uploads and edits, there's still more of an edge there than there is on these other sites. There's no question. There's some good players that play over there. I've seen people in chat mention it as well. There's no doubt about that. But not as many that play on these other sites. Plus, they have some management-free contests where if you get in early enough, that means everything that gets paid in by the player gets paid back out to the player. So check it out. And I know they're going to run some really solid, huge contests for week 1. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sponsor of the MLB Live Before Lock show. Toronto, New York Yankees, Jordan Montgomery, Hyunjin Ryu. He's sitting at $8,500 on DraftKings. Ryu over on FanDuel is $9,500. Their pricing is, I don't want to say it's steep today, but it's a little bit more prohibitive than it usually is. And Ryu, outside of his first 2 starts, he got lit up a bit there, couldn't get through 5 innings. Outside of his last 2 starts, he has been pretty consistent, Terry. He's gone 5+ in all of them, 6 innings in 4 of his last 5. You'll seldom get remarkable outings from Ryu, but you're also not often going to get really disappointed by him. But now he's coming into this spot against the New York Yankees. And here's another one that I was a little bit, I shouldn't say I was surprised by it, but normally the Yankees offense is so powerful that they stand to be favorites even against decent pitchers. They are plus 110 here with a 4.4 total, 4.7 for the Toronto Blue Jays. They are favored here. I shouldn't say at home. They're favored here outside of New York. Let's talk about Ryu first, though, given that he is the better pitcher and a slight favorite against the Yanks.
Yeah, I like the spot for Ryu. You mentioned he's mostly pitching pretty well this year. 9,500 on FanDuel, I think, is justifiable. Just looking at the top starters tool, he ranks a little further down the board than I thought Alex might have him. But there's an ownership edge on DK, only 13% ownership, and that's slightly lower than his probability of success. On FanDuel, there's a significant ownership edge, about 4 times more likely to be a top starter than he's getting owned. So that's a spot I think I can get to here, even against my poor struggling Yankees. Yanks are like 5-18 or something like that in their last 23 since August 18th. They threw up a stat. I've mentioned it in both shows, but they're bottom 28th in the league in most important offensive categories that I can't remember which they were. They threw that up on the screen the other day over the last 3 weeks. So just not playing well. It's more like the Staten Island Yankees lineup that the Yankees are rolling out there right now. No Judge, no Stanton, obviously in the middle of it. And you got some familiar names, obviously, LeMahieu, people like Luke Voigt. Aaron Hicks is really, really struggling. Glaber is back in the lineup, but then you've got Andujar down toward the bottom, aging Brett Gardner, Kyle Higashioka because Gary Sanchez can't hit anymore, Thairo Estrada. There's not much in that Yankees lineup right now, and the star players outside of DJ LeMahieu and maybe Luke Voigt are kind of struggling. So I think we can get a good start here out of Ryu. There's plenty of strikeouts in that Yankees lineup, even without Judge and Stanton there. His strikeouts are up a little bit this year than from over his career high. He's up to 27% this year. So I really like the spot for him. I think we can definitely weaponize him here.
Yeah, no question. And that's why I wanted to point that out, that a 4.4 run total for the Yankees. It again, Ryu's a good pitcher again, but it is not what you would expect. And you just laid it out. Very, very articulate explanation that the Yankees have struggled lately. And this is not the same team. I don't think this is the team that you're a Yankees fan, that you were expecting to see. They've dealt with some injuries. There's no denying that. And they've got a couple big bats that still remain sidelined. That plays a pretty significant role here. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think Hyunjin Ryu, if you're getting low ownership on him, let's see, would you say 13% ownership? Yeah. 13% ownership. Top stack probabilities top pitcher, is at 18%. He's just a good pitcher. And he's also somebody that does a pretty good job of managing splits, managing bats from both sides of the plate. He's been solid at that throughout his career. This season, allowing a 103 ISO to righties, 281 WOBA, really solid numbers. Only a half a home run per 9 and almost 150 batters faced. He's not striking out lefties at that high of a clip, but that's okay. Striking righties out at 30%. I hate to throw out the whole reverse splits thing, but there's no denying that Ryu can come out there against a righty-heavy lineup and mow them down. That's another pretty encouraging thing about him, Terry.
Yeah, definitely. And just looking at these Yanks, they strike out. The active roster strikes out, I think, 24.3% of the time against lefty hitters. WRC plus 12% below average against lefty hitters. I mentioned all the struggles they've had on, against everybody pretty much over the last few weeks. Just to throw another little bonus in there, Ryu's done great limiting hard hit. He's 92nd percentile in hard hit, 71st percentile in average exit velocity. He's missing barrels with his stuff, 70th percentile in strikeout rate. So just pitching well. I definitely like him here.
Any thoughts on the other side of this one, Jordan Montgomery, Toronto Blue Jay bats?
I think I would probably lean more into the Toronto Blue Jays bats side of that equation. Montgomery's not really much of a DFS pitcher in my mind. 6,900 on FanDuel, 64 on DK. If you wanted to roll out like minimum amounts of them, I guess you can do it. But he's not a strikeout pitcher. He's not going to give you much upside there. He relies on inducing soft contact. He's 27.5% soft contact, which is a lot. He's doing well in that. But gives up 1.29 home run per nine to right-handed hitters. Okay whiff on the curveball, but just doesn't generate a lot of swing and miss, doesn't generate a lot of strikeouts. So not a DFS pitcher, kind of like a fourth, fifth starter in real life. Not a guy I really want to get to. I like some of that right-handed Blue Jays power.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Yeah, sorry. I would say the righty Blue Jay bat. I was just agreeing with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where we want to look. Vlad, Lourdes Gurriel, Johnny VR hits from both sides of the plate. You can work him in there. Randall Grichuk, love the home run upside there. So, and then even the lefties, I don't think we need to be too scared with Kevin Biggio against the Jordan Montgomery. Tellez might be pushing him, lefty. Travis Shaw, I'm not sure, but you can work them in sprinkles at least.
I do like Toronto righties here. Montgomery's allowing 2.5 home runs per nine, two opposite-handed bats this year. He's not a prolific strikeout pitcher either. There's a lot that's working in their favor today, and they've got, I think I mentioned it already, but they have a total up close to 4.8 last I looked. Not a ton of high totals on this slate, by the way, with only 12 teams going. There's a lot of pretty low run totals. 1, 2, I think there's like 5 or 6, I think 7, at 4.2 or lower. So 4.8 on a slate like this is actually pretty high. And Jordan Montgomery, he's like, the only thing about Montgomery is, what are your thoughts on the Yankees bullpen? Because this guy is notorious for not pitching deep into games. He very, very rarely gets through more than 5 innings. I'm sure you've noticed as a Yankee fan.
Yeah, I did notice that. Yeah. So we might see like a Chad Green come in for 2-3 innings out of the bullpen. Jake and I talked about that a little bit this morning, and what I made an analogy to is, if you get that, you could end up in a situation where it's like just dropping a Max Scherzer type strikeout rate into the middle of this game for 2 innings, and these guys get mowed down for 2 innings and then come back and face another bullpen arm that's less effective if they get like a Green or one of those high K upside Yankees relievers. That said, I don't know that I'm going to worry too much about that. I think if Montgomery's coming out of the game early, they've probably hung a few runs on him already. They're probably rolling, so the Yanks might not throw in one of those high leverage arms in that spot, unless it's a situation where they do it, they yank him with like bases loaded, something like that. Then you don't necessarily see that guy go 2-3 innings if he pitches that real super high leverage. So I'm not too worried about it. It is something that's on the board to see. Definitely wouldn't really try and pick off like a Chad Green as a pitcher kind of option. That's not something I really like to try and mess with, guessing who's coming out of the bullpen.
You want to move on, or you got anything else on this one?
Just some interesting ownership. The Yanks are getting a little bit of ownership up top. Would you roll much of them against Ryu here?
I'm sorry, of who? The Yankees, you said? Up top?
Yeah, like the top of the Yankees lineup. Just saying, like some of the guys are in like the mid-teens.
I don't have a ton of interest in them, and I think another thing, too, is the fact that they are getting a decent amount of ownership. Now, we have them in our top stack tool with the third highest top stack probability. I was actually a little bit surprised by that. Now, mind you, it's grouped in with they're at 10.8. Toronto and Cleveland and San Diego are all really close. It's all very tightly grouped in there. But Alex, at least with this top stack tool, Awesemo, you guys know him, has them as, I guess a little bit better, more enticing than I do. And, I would listen to him for sure. The problem is Ryu, this isn't kind of just a flash in the pan. Ryu is legitimately good against right-handed bats. I don't think he's just getting lucky against righties. We've seen him do this on countless occasions in Los Angeles through the years. he is good against opposite-handed hitters, Terry. And I know getting the platoon advantage with a laundry list of pretty potent power bats is usually appealing, but this just doesn't feel like the night to me where Ryu collapses and the Yankees go off. He's very good against righties.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even if he loses the game, I expect him to limit them, and I don't expect this limited Yankees offense to really do a ton of damage here. So, yeah, I was surprised by that mark in the top stacks tool as well. I was getting to them in crunches. That was the reason I kind of asked, just seeing where their ownership was. I wanted to make sure that they were low owned, and they're higher than I want. So I'm going to make sure to take some of that out of my crunches. The top half of the lineup is getting like okay power marks, but nothing I really like for me. Maybe a little bit to do with that park in Buffalo and how that's playing, I guess. But like you said, their run total's not very high. So that one I'm having a little bit of difficulty explaining.
Hey, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. As they say, smash that like button, hit the subscribe notification bell as well if you haven't done so yet. No better time to do it, to subscribe to the channel. Listen, we will gladly refund you your misery if you are not a fan of Awesemo's YouTube channel. Simply all you have to do is click unsubscribe. I promise you, it's the easiest thing you'll ever do outside of subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. I learned that saying somewhere, Terry. I shouldn't say where, but anybody that actually has heard it before knows exactly where it comes from. So yeah, subscribe. We've got very excited for this. Our NFL strategy show returns tomorrow. We're going to be running it every single day of the week, Monday through Saturday, and then the deeper dive on Sunday. On the contrary, Saturday. We got a ton of DFS NFL content coming up down the pike. And tomorrow, Sal Vetri, Ben Rasa, and myself. Awesome cast of characters, right? Those guys are great. Yeah, they're going to be with me 11 a.m. Eastern time with the first NFL strategy show of the season. Get stoked. Join us. It's going to be a great time. And if you haven't done so yet, use that promo code SLEEPER. You get 20% off your first month of Awesemo Plus NFL content. Everything we've got for NFL, ownership projections, player projections, all of our tools that Alex Baker created and used himself. We don't just slap his name on them. They're truly his. He uses them to win money. So do our subs. All of our premium articles, the lineup builder, got a fantasy cruncher add-on, you name it. You get 20% off that. Plus you get our entire best ball fantasy football draft kit entirely free and $35 in free credits to FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship, where you can draft best ball lineups, you name it. You get $35 there. So you're saving a ton of money by using the promo code SLEEPER, SLEEPER. Get in on that. Sleeper, 20% off your first month of Awesemo Plus NFL content, and you get the free NFL draft kit plus the FFPC $35 in credits. It's $80 value for $38, not including the other $35. So technically it's like $3. So yeah, I don't know. It's awesome. Highly recommend it. Check it out. And let us know what you think. Hit us up in Slack chat. Hit us up on Twitter if you have any questions. At Laffy_D. I always want to say T McB. That's not it. It's at DigitalB21. We'll see you over there. Remember, Sleeper's the promo code. Get that in before it's too late. September 9th is the last day you can use that, the start of the regular season. Arizona, San Francisco, Terry. Zach Gallen, Kevin Gossman. Gossman, pretty popular today. On DraftKings, you're getting him at 37.7% ownership. Top two pitcher probability is 19.8%. Not bad, but he's got a ton of ownership here. He is coming in at a cheap price. He's one of the sketchier pitchers you're going to find. Gossman's got good strikeout stuff, but he's also liable to completely implode at any given time. We know that if you've played DFS long enough. He's been pretty consistent this year, though. Hasn't been spectacular outside of a start or two. Hasn't been terrible. I think we're getting exactly what was expected from Kevin Gossman.
Yeah, and he's in a good spot overall. So, like you mentioned, they don't call him gas can for nothing. So he could absolutely get lit up for 8-9 runs and a few homers on any given night. But he's pitching fairly well. He's given up 8 home runs in 40 innings this year. Not tragic. 309 xFIP so far. So pitching well in that department. 31% strikeouts. He's basically down to 2 pitches. He's got a 4-seamer and a splitter. Gets tons of whiff with his splitter. It acts as his off-speed pitch. So he does really well with that. What's more intriguing to me is the Diamondbacks, 26th in the league with a 1.47 ISO against right-handed pitching. 87 WRC plus, so 13% below average. They only strike out 20.3% of the time against righties, though, which is kind of burying the lead on my part here. That's second best in the league versus behind the Dodgers. So a little bit of a concern limiting the strikeout upside, which would be the only real thing to worry about. But at the pricing, I don't think we have to sweat that much. I think he's got upside enough to put up a decent enough start for that money and be a pretty reliable SP2 for us on most sites, and part of the double pay down that I talked about before.
NBA Live Before Lock coming up right after this. It's going to be Jason and Rayen taking you up till that 6:30 lock. We got about 8 minutes to go here. Any other thoughts on pitching? I want to be able to get through all these games. I think we hit on a bunch of important stuff already. Bats and anything else from San Francisco and Arizona. As it stands right now, Terry, you've got the Arizona Diamondbacks with a 3.7 run total, Giants with a 3.9 run total. Not projected to be a ton of offense in this one. Pretty razor thin margins.
Yeah, I don't like this spot really for offense. Look, we know the park has been playing well for offense this year, but it is still that park. The pitchers are good enough that I think they can limit these teams. So yeah, I don't really like either stack. I think San Francisco's obnoxiously overpriced, particularly on DK. They're affordable on FanDuel, but I don't love it. Not a spot I really want to go to against Gallen, who's pitching pretty well. Kind of like Gallen as an option. He's pricey, 10-6 on FanDuel. Like him better at 9,200 on over on DK. So I think he's in play over there. He's the third-ranked starter on DK. And getting out of the top three guys, he's the lowest owned. So could be a decent, interesting pivot off of a much higher on Lamet.
Okay. Tim, yeah, no, we're live, Tim. This is consecutive streams, MLB and NBA. Got to get them both in. Got a lot of complaints when we weren't doing MLB. Now you get complaints when you are doing MLB. You can't win around here, Terry. San Diego, Colorado. Let's talk about Dinelson Lamet, Kyle Freeland. We'll go to Lamet first for obvious reasons. He's going to be extremely popular. Him and Gossman both right around tied for the second most ownership today on our top pitcher tool. And Dinelson Lamet has the second highest top pitcher probability behind only Max Scherzer. At 8,800 on DraftKings, he feels like yet another pitcher who is, I don't know, it feels to me that he's underpriced again. 3.6 run implied total at Petco Park. This isn't at Coors, it's at Petco. 3.6 run total for the Rockies. And Lamet, we know, already has more than enough strikeout stuff to get the job done here. Striking batters out at 32% on the season. He's not perfect. He's going to cough up some runs at times, but he's got a 14.5% swinging strike rate, and he's sub 9K against a team with almost a 3.5 run implied total. What else do I need to say?
There you go. That's it. Yeah, love the spot for Lamet here. He's first on in my list here with a bullet. Really, really like him. Rockies strike out just 22.6% of the time, which is 11th best in the league against right-handed pitching. But this is a strikeout artist of exceptional caliber. He strikes out 34.5% of right-handers this year. Really, really strong pitcher. The Rockies sitting at a 78 WRC plus against righties this year, which is 27th in the league, and a 72 WRC plus overall on the road. So Rockies against a righty on the road, I think that's a spot we can definitely attack with the pitcher. And he's going to limit their best bats. Their best bats, for the most part, hit from the right side of the plate with Arenado, with Story. You've got Blackmon on the left side, but outside of him, Danny Murphy, not the player he was. Ryan McMahon, not somebody I'm scared of, and really not much else to worry about in this lineup. So killer spot for Lamet in my book.
Yeah, I love him today. Do you have any interest in Freeland, or should we spend most of this last 5 minutes, not including Houston, Oakland? We'll take the next couple minutes maybe on San Diego bats. 5.1 run implied total. Among all of the games on this slate, this is the highest implied total of any team right now, Terry, unless it's updated since I've last looked. But there's not another team with a 5+ run implied total. Not to say that makes them, the greatest spot out there, because pricing has to be factored in. And San Diego has one of the lowest value ratings on our top stack tool, but they also have pretty high chances of being the top stack. It's a good lineup and a pretty decent matchup. Can we get there?
Yeah, I think we can. With some of the cheap pitchers that we've talked about and some of the savings that are available on the board, I think we can definitely make it happen with this team. Just looking at the lineup that they announced, it looks like Yeah, we're not getting Mateo in the lineup, which is unfortunate. I was looking forward to having him as a cheap option toward the bottom of this lineup. But we do still have Profar down there at only 3,800. He kind of functions as a decent wraparound if you want to do that. Sacrifice a plate appearance to get a little bit different. So I can justify that. Trent Grisham as a lefty against a lefty and not in love with, but everybody else in this lineup for me is pretty much in play against Freeland. Freeland's a ground ball specialist. That's like the one thing he does well. And he's done it pretty well, 55% ground balls this year. But he gives up a lot of power to righties. He induces a fair amount of soft contact. But the Padres, 8th in the league in against left-handed pitching with a 206 ISO, a 117 WRC plus against lefties is 9th in baseball, 21.4% strikeout rate against lefties. So just dynamite lineup against a lefty who I don't think is a very good pitcher. Maybe he limits their upside by keeping the ball on the ground, only gives up 4 or 5 and doesn't give up 3 home runs to these guys. But still, I like their chances to be one of the higher scoring offenses, even if it goes that route. So, yeah, I'm all over the Padres. And you're getting a bit of an ownership edge based on that pricing. So, like you said, it's just an exercise in making it work. But if you can, I think it's a great, great spot.
I don't disagree with you at all. If their ownership is going to be suppressed because of that price, the pricing. So, this might be a spot where even though Gossman's expensive, is cheap but high owned, you get to him and you find a way to get to, I don't know. I don't think it'd be that tough with, you just pointed a lot of this out, but just Dinelson Lamet, you throw Gossman in there. It's not that hard to get a pretty expensive stack with some of these pitchers that are priced so low on DraftKings. Might be a little bit different on FanDuel, but there's some good pricing. You even talked about Brad Keller being someone that you'd be willing to run out. So it's definitely doable. Most slates at their prices, I would say it's going to be tough, but it's not that hard with some really good pitchers at good prices. I'm on board with it. You ready to close this out?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, a couple minutes. You got NBA Live Before Lock coming in for all of you guys just joining now. You know what you can do while you wait around? Hit that thumbs up button. It's really the best thing to do, and it'll help pass the time. Okay, Oakland and Houston. We got Christian Javier, Chris Bassett. I'll let you run with this one, Terry. They're over the final minute here. It's all you, hitters, pitchers, you name it, whatever you want to talk about.
I like the bats on both sides. Wrote up the A's, wrote up the Astros in different columns. I think both of them are doing well. The A's switched from Montas to Bassett. Doesn't really put too much of a damper on my enthusiasm for the Astros. Took their home run numbers down in my home run model a little bit, but I think with the pricing on both sites, they're definitely in play. They're not expensive for the caliber that this lineup brings, and you've got some excellent hitters from George Springer, Reddick, not the greatest in against left. In opposite-handed matchups over the last year. I was surprised by that. His splits are down a little bit, but Brantley as a lefty is very much in play there. Then you've got Yuli Gurriel as a same-handed hitter, fine. Kyle Tucker, sneaky AL MVP candidate this year. He's been hitting great. Drawing some ownership on that stack, but I'm curious to see if it comes down a little bit with the Bassett change. On the other side, love Matt Olson's chances to hit a home run against Javier here. Got a very nice power mark on him. Really like what Tommy La Stella brings to the top of this lineup. No Marcus Semien again tonight. I'm just noticing in the lineup there, but you've got Ramon Laureano hitting back up top now, and no Chapman in the lineup. So they're a little bit diminished too. But you've got Kana hitting third where you usually get Chapman. So maybe focus on that top 4 of the A's. Maybe you can work in some Piscotty and some Grossman on the back end. Sean Murphy is a catcher I always like to mention, a little bit sneaky, a lot of hard contact in that bat, only 5% ownership on DK. So I think you can get to him a little bit there too. So A's came down a little bit, but I still like the stack there.
Beautiful. Nice and succinct. We needed to get that done. We ran a little late with the early games, but we got 6 in the books. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Stick around. Live Before Lock, NBA edition coming up next. It's Jason, Floyd, and Rayen. We will see you back here tomorrow, MLB Live Before Lock, NFL Strategy Show, NBA Strategy Show, MLB Strategy Show, PGA. I don't know. If the sport's out there and we've got content for it right here at youtube.com/Awesemo. We'll catch you back here tomorrow. a good show, fellas.
Thank you.
It is NBA live before lock time right here at Awesemo.com. I am Jason. That is Ryan. Ryan, man, how you doing? First time we've had a chance to do a show together, man. How you, man?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be on with you. I know you've been, obviously, you're our MMA guy and hopping over to MLB and NBA. I'm very excited to do a show with you today. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. It's like going back to my old sports radio days of, you never know what type of show you're going to be talking about today. Today it's NBA, man. I'm excited for this slate here tonight, man. We got a ton to talk about, of course. So we're going to tell you about our sponsor, No House Advantage, as we go on throughout this show. But Celtics Raptors going to kick it off here at 6:30. Then we've got Clippers and Nuggets following that game. And the first thing, we are going to definitely get into the questions. So fire those up in YouTube, also in our premium Slack account. But let's start off here on the FanDuel side of things and our top 5 owned players.
Yeah, so on FanDuel, I mean, it's always a different build in DraftKings. And I kind of look at it building like 5 micro rosters in the sense to like win big, you got to get the 2 highest scoring point guards, 2 highest scoring shooting guards, 2 highest small forwards, so on and so forth. We're dealt with this dilemma today where Nikola Jokic is ruled questionable, and the whole slate depends on him being ruled in or out. Now, I personally have built lineups with him being in. I know he was ruled questionable yesterday. He looked phenomenal in that first half yesterday. He did first half, last game out, he did slow down. So based on that news, it's going to change the whole slate of the outcome of the slate. So everyone should be prepared for that news. If he's ruled in, he's a great play again. I like him quite a bit. But going on to the question of the top 5 highest owned players, I know, just pulling this up right now. With the top 5 highest owned players on FanDuel today, taking a look at that right now. So Jeremy Grant coming in at 5,000, that small forward spot at 58.3%. Paul George, Marcus Smart, Jamal Murray, and Lou Will. Rounding out that top 5. Ownership projections are free today. Take a look at our Awesemo NBA Twitter handle. Make sure to give that a follow and take a look at our ownership projections. And in the lineup, if you want to, in a 2-game slate, to build a lineup of being like chalk's usually pretty solid out. And the top 3 guys shown in this lineup on the screen to the left, take a look with George, Smart, and Jeremy Grant. Paul George is $100 different than Fred VanVleet, and to differentiate itself in a 2-game slate, you could pivot off George to VanVleet at a much lower ownership. And Nick Nurse has just been rolling out the minutes to these guys all series long, and it's been paying off the last 2 games. So an ownership pivot in terms of Paul George is going to Fred VanVleet. Jeremy Grant at 5K is a phenomenal play, rightfully so, to come in at the ownership on the small forward position. And other guys, Lou Williams, 5,100. He is too cheap. His upside is through the roof in this matchup. He played pretty well down in that second half yesterday, trying to bring him slowly into the game. I do expect him to get more run. That offense is lethal when he's on the court. Obviously, you see liability on defense. Someone who I'm willing to go under the field on for the 3rd straight time in the series is probably Jamal Murray. 54% for my liking is a little too high. I would like to find those $700 and get up to Kyle Lowry for that FanDuel in terms of like making these pivots, making sure you're kind of different, being different than the rest of the field. That's going to be what matters on this 2-game slate, Jason.
Yeah, I will tell you when I was doing some crunches right before we started this show, Jamal Murray was coming up a ton for me. I'm with you. I like Kyle Lowry more than I like Jamal Murray.
Yeah, and Kyle Lowry is someone who can get there with steals and a few blocks here and there, but he's going to get his shot volume. He's getting the minutes. Obviously, barring any foul trouble is the concern. Kyle Lowry has been phenomenal. He deserving the 9,200 price tag. He might be a little too cheap for the amount of minutes he's getting. If he's going to get 40 plus minutes, he's gotten 50 plus fantasy at FanDuel points the last two times out. I mean, the price tag is so worth it. And there is enough value in the sense where those raw points are going to matter, especially on FanDuel on this 2-game slate.
You know, you mentioned about our free premium content today is the NBA ownership projections. So just as since we're talking FanDuel, I'm like, let me look what Kyle Lowry's at, 33%. I like that spot more than I like Jamal Murray at nearly 55%.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that I do think that ownership is probably going to rise over. I know the ownership projections maybe were 2 hours ago, maybe they've updated, but these ownership projections on screen were from about 2 hours ago. So with that, I mean, that ownership discount is such a massive discount where you can jump the field, and that's finding your way to jump the field using these ownership projections is what's going to make sure you stand out on this 2-game slate.
Let's move over to the DraftKings side of things. Same type of question here with our top 5 owned players. When you look at that top 5, what sticks out to you?
So in that top 5, as producer Jordan puts that up on the screen right now. So based on our ownership projections here, so Zubac coming at 43% at 4,900, Siakam, followed by Lowry, Fred VanVleet, Millsap coming up at that 34.5% at 4,700. So if you were to play these top 3 owned players, you're going to get Lowry, Siakam, and Zubac. Zubac is someone who I strongly think Doc Rivers needs to give some more minutes to. He plays pretty much better than Montrezl Harrell does, in my opinion, against Nikola Jokic. And next thing you know, he didn't get any fourth quarter run, I want to say, last time out. And at that price tag, Zubac has a legitimate upside of 4,900. He could find a way to 40 points and really come in as a solid value play at 4,900. Zubac is someone who I'm willing to find a way to at least be with the level of the field and maybe if not over. And with that being said, Zubac is very worth that price tag, and finding a way to get him in there is a priority for me.
Yeah, just looking at our updated ownership projections that we have, as we mentioned, they are free over at Awesemo.com today. Kyle Lowry is right now the top of the list at 44%. You mentioned about Zubac. He's now at 21%, so you got to like the value there.
Yeah, no, definitely. With that ownership projections update, take a look at the free ownership projections. I'm sure Jordan has dropped that in the YouTube chat. Make sure to take a look at the updated numbers. At 21%, yeah, I'm going to find a way to get over that for sure. And if you're building one lineup, I don't mind playing Zubac at all. It's safer with Jokic not being questionable, so that's a great option. And you said Kyle Lowry is coming at the top, correct, at 39%?
44%. What it is?
So yeah, 44%. Yeah, looking at my DraftKings crunch, I like Lowry. I have quite a bit over the field right now. I like my Raptors just because of the minutes kind of getting from Nick Nurse, and I feel confident with that floor on a 2-game slate is important, and the upside with 40 plus minutes almost. Looking at what VanVleet got last time, he got 45 minutes last time. Kyle Lowry got 44, and he's gotten 46 the game before that when they were down 2-0 and OG hit the shot at the buzzer. Raptors where I'm not interested in is $5,700 OG Anunoby. I'm with the what's the updated ownership at Jason right now? As it pull up the screen?
OG is at 19%.
Yeah, 19%. I mean, 5,700. If OG is going to get those 35 plus minutes, he showed the upside in games 2 and 3. He put 32 and 38, but that's like, in my opinion, OG ceiling. In the regular season, he had a couple games where he hit that 40 fantasy point mark, but at 5,700, I'm willing to just get it right about the field with OG. But someone who I always think has a legitimate upside of 50, 60 fantasy points is Pascal Siakam. I know this matchup has been a rugged matchup, but it's been close. Nick Nurse, like I said, is just not trusting his bench that much outside of Ibaka. And his starters are good. I mean, 8,100 Siakam compared to, I want to say, what's Jason Tatum? Jason Tatum's at 9,300. Those $1,200, you can do quite a bit on DraftKings today. And I like saving those $1,200 and getting in Siakam instead of Jason Tatum in that first game.
In terms of a value play on the Raptors, and speaking of DraftKings, what's your take on Marc Gasol at 4,400?
Yeah, Marc Gasol is always someone who has that upside. People have been calling him washed. Yes, he's not Defensive Player of the Year Marc Gasol, starting All-Star center Marc Gasol anymore. That's pretty evident. But he did foul out. He did have 6 fouls last time and fouled out. And the game before, the last 2 games, he's gotten 26 minutes. Marc Gasol could hit a few threes, draw a couple fouls on Daniel Tice. He could pay off that $4,400 price tag. What's the updated ownership on him right now, Jason?
He is at 30. I said here a second ago. He is at 33%.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's coming in higher than Zubac. I do think Zubac has a higher upside than Marc Gasol. It's tough. But those $500 do matter on a 2-game slate when you're trying to just find extra room for that additional stud. Yeah, it's close, but I think I'm still going to prefer Gasol, especially in that center position.
Of course, we are going to get to your questions. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the prop report, but do want to let you know about our brand new sponsor, No House Advantage. They are taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusive peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with the traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and check out the daily prop contest without having to make a deposit a dime. You can download that app, and No House Advantage will match your first deposit with up to $20 in free play when you use a promo code Awesemo. Refer a friend and get $5 more after their first deposit. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today.
Yeah, No House Advantage, a new sponsor. I personally think it's really important to take advantage of these new sites. And obviously, the money back is great using that promo code. But always trying to find that edge before like the masses come in is how you can really take advantage and build your bankroll. I've done that with previous sponsors we've had, and that's how I have maintained that bankroll. And sometimes these new sites really do carry you for weeks, while the bigger sites where these mass huge contests make it really hard down the long run. And taking advantage of our promo code, make sure to do that. And also to check out our prop report written by one of our new content contributors, Eric Lindquist. And where he shares a few picks on Kyle Lowry, Siakam, and Fred VanVleet. Jordan just dropped that in the chat. Make sure to check out that site. Make sure to sign up and check out that article. And I do think it's a great site. Alex has already released some of his projections on our site. So if you look on the NBA projections tab for us, you can take advantage of his projections. I know they've been money for some people who have been using them so far. So make sure to check out No House Advantage.
In terms of some of those player props that are kind of sticking out to you, what sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was skimming through Eric's article, and the 3 picks, I can't agree with them more. And they go along with what Nurse has done with the minutes so far. So skimming through that article, I do think there's an advantage there. I mean, to look at it specifically, I would focus on those 3 picks right now, Jason. Anything that you noticed by any chance?
No, I did not notice anything. One of the things I've been doing over the last hour is kind of constructing my lineups. You mentioned about the Jokic thing. That's going to be, obviously could be a game time decision. You got to start thinking about if for some reason he doesn't play, I would expect him to play, at least give it a go. Is who you're going to pivot to. Maybe are you going to try to pivot to, who do you pivot to at, especially if, on the center spot, then do you try to maybe make a change with your roster, maybe try to get someone like a Paul George, a Kawhi Leonard, maybe a Jamal Murray, someone like that?
Yeah, I mean, without Jokic, expect the rest of that starting lineup to obviously get a usage bump. And additionally, I would expect Mason Plumlee to start, and at his low price, he would become a phenomenal play. So, I mean, it would be really tough not to fade Mason Plumlee. But Mason Plumlee throughout the series is just like when he's on the floor, he just picks up a foul every other minute. So that's a concern if he were to start and whatnot. Mason Plumlee is probably one of the most underrated backup centers in the league. He probably could find his way on starting on I want to say at least half the teams in the league. He's a phenomenal passer. He's around Nikola Jokic's defense and a better rim protector. So Plumlee would be a great play. Jamal Murray's usage would go up. I would find a way to use that salary on probably Murray, Gary Harris, and also on the other side, having that extra salary left over. Because right now, the way I built my lineups is I have Jokic in. I would probably find a way to upgrade to Kawhi Leonard in some of those lineups. But without Jokic, there's a higher chance of potentially a blowout. And that would also affect the way you build lineups. If you're going to draw a narrative saying, all right, Denver just gets absolutely destroyed, you can start sprinkling in some bench guys. And speaking of bench guys, last time out, JaMychal Green played over 20 minutes and won a lot of people some big money, scoring just over 20 fantasy points at that low price tag. Based off that recency bias, I do think he'll be gradually over-owned, and he did steal minutes from Zubac. So I would like to just pivot back to Zubac in this scenario. But what we saw last time out, he does give him the ability to stretch the floor a little bit more than Montrezl Harrell and Zubac. So maybe Doc opts for that, but I would be cautiously taking that into consideration.
Of course, we're just about 25 minutes away from before Celtics and Raptors are going to tip off. Speaking of that game, one of the questions I saw in chat a little while ago was people wondering, why is everyone in love with Marcus Smart today?
Yeah, maybe Marcus Smart's always one of those guys who I prefer on FanDuel because he has that 5 steal upside, but clearly he has a 5 3-pointer, 6 3-pointer upside as well, as he did that in game 2 to really pull Boston away and really help him, give him that win. But he's come down to earth since then. Marcus Smart is someone at 5,700 on FanDuel is someone who I'd probably prefer than his DraftKings price tag just because the upside's greater. But I don't mind Marcus Smart, and he has that upside as we've seen earlier in the series.
Another question that we just got in on the YouTube chat was, two notable price guys here, Paul George or Jaylen Brown. Obviously, Paul George had a couple of those bad games in the first series, but he has bounced back.
Yeah, Paul George has come back. He's personally he was too good for those struggles that happened in the first series. I mean, he came third in the MVP last year. Obviously, people were concerned seeing that he had his shoulders taped up. He did come out saying he had some mental health issues, which he's overcome in some of the post-game interviews. So that's good to hear. He did play well last game. So I like Paul George quite a bit. But Jaylen Brown is someone who faced some foul trouble, struggled mightily in that first half. But I like Jaylen Brown yet again today. I think he's someone Boston has been relying on shooting the outside jumper, as Toronto has a tendency to leave those outside shots open from the corner. And Jaylen Brown's usually in that area taking those corner threes more often than not. So I like Jaylen Brown. He has shown his upside in games 2 and 3. In terms of head-to-head, I do think Paul George has a higher upside potentially. It's very close for me. It's really tough to narrow that down, but I like both options. I do have many lineups with both of them on both sites.
Another question we got was related to the Nuggets and the power forward position on FanDuel with Paul Millsap and Michael Porter. They're essentially priced the same, $5,000 for Porter, $4,900 for Millsap. I know when I was putting my lineups together, Millsap was coming up a lot for me.
Yeah, I'm a big Michael Porter fan. I do think he has a huge, huge future and ceiling ahead of him. I'm glad he's healthy. Someone who I've actually followed since he was in high school, and he looked great off that bench yesterday. In 16 minutes, he just came in and really dominated that second unit. And he was not a liability as much as he's been on defense. He's still kind of a ghost out there. and the Clippers do attack him, which is why Malone won't hesitate to pull him off the court. Millsap does seem safer. Millsap showed his upside in that game 1 matchup. I'm willing to go back to Millsap just because I think people are going to box score watch. Maybe they watched the game, they saw Millsap wasn't as effective. But for me personally, Millsap is safer than Porter Jr. And you do save those $200, but I don't mind having both in some lineups. There's probably a way that can happen if Jokic were to be ruled out. Millsap play some 5, and Porter might slide in and start. So it's going to come down to that Jokic news, and it's going to affect Porter. He's going to get some more minutes and usage, obviously, with that happening. But in 16 minutes last time, he put up 25 fantasy points, which is great. But the 16 minutes is what I'm concerned about, because those 16 minutes, you could easily put up 6. So it's definitely a high risk, high reward type of play, in my opinion.
I know a lot of people are asking about Jokic, whether or not he's going to play or not. The reality is you're probably not going to know till 30 minutes before tip-off.
Yeah, and that's something you just got to pay attention. And there's going to be there's going to be a lot of people who don't make that pivot, and people who pay attention are going to get rewarded. And that's going to be what the slate is defined by, is Nikola Jokic being ruled in or ruled out. Personally, I know it's a wrist injury. It was yesterday. I don't know if something happened after the game, something in the walkthrough practice or whatnot. I haven't seen what the Denver beat reporters have said, but my expectations are he's going to find a way to get out on the court and play.
This is just the reality. Even if the Denver Nuggets and Mike Malone know right now whether or not he's playing, they're not going to reveal that answer. This is coaches playing chess with their opposing coach. They're not going to sit there and give you a 3-hour notice of whether or not the guy's playing or not. I mean, that's the reality, and that's for me being around sports broadcasting for a long time. I'm just going to tell you, you're not going to get that answer till at the very last moment.
Yeah, and that's just like it's just how it goes. They're just going to find that slim edge and let those mental pickings on Doc Rivers' side, and they're going to go from there. But yeah, Denver played phenomenal last game. One guy we haven't mentioned on Denver who hit some huge threes down the stretch in the fourth quarter is Gary Harris. Gary Harris is one of those guys who I think has underperformed this year. He's obviously has been injury prone. He's one of those guys on FanDuel that can get that upside. I think a couple years ago he led the league in deflections, and on FanDuel those steals really rack up in a hurry. Having that extra point there, and if Jokic were to be ruled out, he's going to get some usage. And I like him already at that DraftKings price point. He played 29 minutes last game, played phenomenal defense, and I wouldn't shock me if he gets finally over that 30-minute mark. Just because he's coming back from that injury, they probably have been a little cautious with him, but they're going to need him to win another game in the series, and I like him quite a bit again.
Of course, as we've mentioned, right now on the site, free premium content is NBA ownership projections. And if you would like to get access to all the premium content and tools that we have, you got to sign up for an Awesemo Plus NBA Weekly Pass for $16.95. This includes full access to our leading player projections, ownership projections, the boom bust tool, and so much more. Get your pass today. Go to awesemo.com/join to sign up for an Awesemo Plus NBA Weekly Pass. When I look at some of the value options today, one of the players you could potentially turn to is Pat Beverly. Even though at the end of the game 2 nights ago, as he get kicked out in the last minute of the game, I'm sitting there going, man, like, I get you're trying to make a point with the refs, but I'm like, I hope that if you want to be a Pat Beverly supporter today, I hope that doesn't carry into where the referees kind of remember that a little bit.
Yeah, Pat Beverly is someone who was mega chalk last time out, and he did not perform. He is one of those guys. He's like they need it, like, for him to like really strike that upside. He only played 15 minutes as is. He's still coming back from that injury, and I'm once again a little cautious. I was on him a little bit more on that first game because he came in at $3,500, and the way that slate broke out, and he worked out because in 12 minutes he really hit that upside of getting 19 DraftKings points in that first game, which worked out. He burned a lot of people last time out. Now he's coming in at what's the ownership that's coming in on him right now? So
on Pat Bev, which side?
Let's say DraftKings.
on DraftKings. Pat Bev. Did I just miss him? Patrick Beverly, 22% on DK. And then over on the FanDuel side of the things, he is 8%.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm willing to go under the field just because I like the Raptors guards and Van Vliet and Lowry. And I personally like Gary Harris at $4,100. Just finding those extra $100 or extra $500, $600 to get up to Harris in the guard position and for those lineups are, I think, more valuable. So take a look at that and make your decisions off that. I'm willing to go under the field on Patrick Beverly. I'll have some, but nowhere as much as the field.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was on him the other day too, just because I was just looking at the value aspect of it. You know, especially when you like some of those high price, players that you want to go up to, it'll be interesting to kind of see what Kawhi Leonard, he ends up being at ownership wise. Obviously you got to pay up for him. Over on FanDuel, he's at 26%. And over on DraftKings, he is. Where is Kawhi at? Kawhi is 20%.
Yeah, and Kawhi Leonard at 20% is very nice. I mean, he had, in terms of a basketball standpoint, had a very poor game, but he just missed out on a triple-double last time out. I don't expect Kawhi Leonard to go 4 of 16 from the field again. I expect him to bounce back strong, and it's Kawhi Leonard. I mean, in the playoffs, there's no one really that he has a trouble with outside of Kevin Durant. He doesn't have to worry about Kevin Durant this year. Kawhi Leonard's an absolute beast. He can shatter that price tag. I know it's all the way up there, but 20% Kawhi Leonard to me is low. I would like to get over on Kawhi Leonard, and especially if we were to get Jokic news, shifting over that Jokic money to upgrade to Kawhi Leonard, I think will be the way to go. Just because if he's coming in at 20%, I'd like to be quite a bit over the field.
Of course, got just a little over 1,200 people in here watching us on YouTube. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button on YouTube. Of course, if you're not subscribed, to also hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that notification bell, let you know when we have a new show coming. Of course, this week got a ton of NFL content. Get you ready for week 1. You got to use the promo code SLEEPER to get 25% off your Awesemo Plus NFL monthly pass. As NFL season Thursday night kicks off. Looking forward to that one. We did get a question about the best plays under 4,000. So as I look at on the FanDuel side of things, you mentioned about Jermichael Green. I think questions how many minutes does he get? If he gets that 20 minutes, you got to like him at 3,900.
Yeah, and if the game were to blow out, he's going to get some blowout run as well. It gets really dark under 4,000 on FanDuel. So I know those are it's how you can separate yourselves to come out on top. If you want to take shots on maybe Landry Shamet, if they think he's going to get some more run than 10 minutes last time out, he scored 0 fantasy points last time out. He'll be minusculely owned. I don't think his ownership will come in that much. Grant Williams is someone who had 18 minutes in game 3, 13 minutes in game 4. He's not the greatest point per minute producer, but if you want to take a shot in a 150, I don't mind Grant Williams. He'll be very low owned. And if somehow those games have been close all year, if the game were to blow out and Grant Williams is going to find his way on the floor, other guys under that 4K price tag on FanDuel that I'm taking a look at, Norman Powell is, I know, 4,300, and he was someone who was really highly owned all over the first couple of games, but his his minutes have kind of fluctuated from the low teens to high teens, and he has not produced that well. Why I'm a little skeptical with Norman Powell if he were to come in at significant ownership again is just that he's not going to get much run outside of if there's foul trouble. So that's where you'd have to keep an eye on. So other guys under that 4K price tag, man, it's dark. Mason Plumlee will be an absolute amazing value play if Jokic were to be out, but that's about it, man. It's dark. I am hesitant. I'm willing to find a way to just have more of a balance in the sense of balance build in sense, finding like the proper mid-tier prices and sprinkling a set or two instead of going to superstars and really some scrubs. Like those are some real scrubs out there.
Over on our premium Slack account, Iron Maiden says, thoughts on Harrell? Feels like Doc prefers Morris and Zubak at this point.
Yeah, Montrezl Harrell has been tough. I mean, he was away from the bubble for 3-4 weeks. He won his Sixth Man of the Year award earlier in the week. Montrezl Harrell has this upside. He has played well against Denver in the past. If you were building 150 lineups, I would like to have some Harrell. I can't recommend that full fade just because in Denver, he's played very well against Denver in the past. There's 2 games in the regular season he had over 40 fantasy points. One of them, he did that in 20 minutes. So the upside is there against Denver. And as we saw what happened in game 1, this game can get blown out and Harrell's getting that blowout run. So there is obviously there's a decent amount of chance he can outscore Zubac and you can jump the field. But I think Zubac is a better matchup. It really depends on what Doc does. As we saw, Harrell didn't get much of that run towards the end as Jermichael Green got those minutes. So that did throw a wrench into things, but Harrell is someone 5,200 on FanDuel. A little skeptical there, but on DraftKings, I can definitely see him. You can play him for sure.
One of the questions we got over on YouTube was, would you pair Robert Williams and Daniel Theis together?
It's anything in the 2-game slate. I'm okay doing such things because it's comes down to positions and salary more than correlation. I'm fine doing that. I have probably a couple lineups that do that as well. I'm not actively trying to do that, but I'm fine. That can definitely pay off. They're going to share their minutes at center, and that's how it's going to roll. Robert Williams is one of those guys who has a ton of energy to start off the game, but he clearly looks like he's like kind of capped. I don't think he can find a way to get to 20 minutes. That's all he has in his energy tank. But 3,800, I mean, that's a pretty cheap price tag. And if you have, if those like $1,000 off of Zubac are helping you get another stud you like, yeah, I don't mind pairing up Theis and Williams together. It's a 2-game slate. You're going to have to get a little uncomfortable to spike an upside in your lineup.
I know obviously a lot of people are asking about injury status with Jokic. We kind of talked about it's going to be probably 30 minutes before game time before we truly find out whether he's in or out or not. But people are wondering on the FanDuel side of things, because of the uncertainty of his status, is he a fade?
Sorry, I missed the first half of that question again. Can you say that again?
No, just in terms of with the uncertainty of Jokic on FanDuel. Does he become a fade?
Yeah, you can build lineups just fine without Jokic. And Jokic, the problem on FanDuel is those raw points of that center means so much. Like, let's say if Jokic were to go out and play, and if people are scared that he doesn't play, he put up 56 fantasy points last time out. That is a phenomenal game, and that's right in his wheelhouse, if not higher. They clearly made an effort to make sure to get him involved as many ways possible in that first quarter as he scored 44 points. One thing that I don't expect to happen again is picking up those 3 blocks. That did obviously inflate that FanDuel score, but Jokic is scoring 56 fantasy points. If not, and 56 points or higher, I feel like you're going to need him on the slate. And the raw points is what carry you throughout a 2-game slate. And you can make a case at 56 fantasy points, he could outscore the rest of the center field by 30. As like the center field is very, very bleak on FanDuel outside of Jokic. You can take your shots on Zubac, but they're at that price tag at 9,400. He can pay that off quite simply. In a fade in a 1 lineup, it depends on what your risk tolerance is. I would like to make sure you have roster like flexibility in the sense if you're to rule out, I don't mind pivoting down to Plumlee and finding a way to upgrade to other Nuggets players and other Clippers players. That's your risk tolerance. If you were to rule in, and you can still find a way to manage that lineup. That's how important NBA uses. It's just how flexible are you with your lineup and how reactive you are to the news and what happens. There's a chance Plumlee might not start, which changes everything. So it really depends on your risk tolerance in that situation.
Just over at Awesemo.com or the Odd Shopper section, which you can check that out. Just go right there at the top of the page, see Odd Shopper. Looking at the over-under numbers on these games, 212 for the Raptors and Celtics, 220 on Clippers and Nuggets. I felt when I was kind of just doing some crunches a little earlier, I was getting more in the early game than I was the late game.
Yeah, and people always tend to, like, when there's shorter games, people are more willing to game stack a game. And the way it works out in that early game, those guys just kind of fit. It's like a puzzle, and you feel comfortable with those players. You feel safe with those Raptors minutes. You feel safe with those Celtics minutes. And we're a little concerned with that Denver news. So it depends on how different you get. I don't mind having 3 Raptors in a lineup. I don't mind having maybe 3 Celtics. Make it a little tough. They haven't all gotten there at the same time. Maybe you can spring 3 Celtics are fine. Let's say if you have Robert Williams and 2 other Celtics. It really depends on the salary you're spending. But I don't mind having Raptors in my lineup at 3. I mean, those guys, as we've seen, those 40-plus minutes are too good to pass up on.
Is 4 Raptors too many?
No, not in the 2-game slate. I've seen 5. I don't know if 4. You can't get to 5 on FanDuel. I think you can play 5 on DraftKings, but no, 4 Raptors is not too many. I have lineups with 4. It's just how 2-game slates go. It's okay to do that. And let's say if the game were to go to double overtime and you game stack the game, you're gonna obviously other people are going to be there with you. But no, 4 Raptors isn't too many. And you can find a way. Let's say you have 3 Raptors and you have a narrative. Let's say Van Vliet gets in foul trouble or Lowry get in foul trouble. You have Powell with Siakam and OG. That's a unique 3-man Raptor lineup. So take a look at those free ownership projections we have and find a way to differentiate yourself if you really want to take that solo prize. But if you want to hold hands and come first in many ways in this 2-game slate, it's okay to come first. You're going to obviously find a way to pay off that entry fee, but it's always nice to come solo and first on these 2-game slates and finding those really small places to make your differentiation. I'm okay leaving $1,000 on salary just to be different, just for the sole purpose of being different. It's not probably the best play to do, but to be different and just checking all the boxes. Do all your players have a significant upside to carry you to the top? And if they can, roll with the lineup. That's why we play DFS, right? And we want to have that upside throughout the top to bottom of that lineup.
And just looking at the latest ownership projections that we got about 10 minutes ago, 3 of the top 4 on DK are Raptors. Lowry, Van Vliet, Siakam. The non-Raptor in that top 4 is Zubac.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, rightfully so. I don't mind it. I think you could roll with that chalk and get different in the rest of your lineup and still be okay. You can draw a narrative in that second game. Let's say you have those Raptors and you think, if it's not a Jokic game, is it a Paul Millsap game? Is it a Jeremy Grant game with a higher upside? He went 1 of 9 and still found a way to get there solely on rebounds and blocks and steals. And he's priced at $5,200 on DraftKings. He's priced at $5,000 on FanDuel. If he's going to get those, I think he got 40 minutes last time. Went 1 of 9, missed all his threes, and so I like Jeremy Grant quite a bit in this matchup. So you can get different there, and that's one way to get different. If you want to play, if you think Porter Jr. is going to get more than 16 minutes and get maybe upwards of 20 minutes, just find these narratives in your lineup where okay, this can happen. And if you're comfortable with that, I'd say roll with it.
Yeah, Jeremy Grant is the highest owned on FanDuel, 56% our latest ownership projections on the play there. Jesse goes, can you please help me out, Ryan? Paul George and Jamal Murray or Kawhi Leonard and Lou Williams?
So obviously there is some negative correlation between Lou Will and Kawhi Leonard. I would probably just lean on the side of Paul George and Jamal Murray. There's more of an upside where they both find a way somehow. Let's say they both can. It's more likely than the other pairing. They both score 55 fantasy points or more. At that point, where you're going to need both. So I think I would lean on the Murray and George side. And so, Paul George is someone who I've been actively trying to always try to get over the field, just because I think there's going to be a huge upside game, and I just want to be on it before the field gets there. So I like Paul George. He's priced at 8,300 on DraftKings. He can get there with steals and whatnot. It's a tough pick between Van Vliet and George on FanDuel. I think that's a big decision point where people are going to be tough to make. I'm struggling with that pick. I made sure to have an equal exposure to both of them.
You mentioned about Paul George and liking him there. How about Pascal Siakam when you compare the two of him and Paul George?
That's tough. I do think when someone is guaranteeing 40 minutes in a game that's less likely to potentially blow out, I would take Siakam just because I do think it's safer. And I know Boston's a little tough matchup, obviously a lot tougher matchup than it is for George versus Denver. I prefer Siakam there. I'd roll with the chalk, unfortunately, but that's what I'm doing.
Of course, if you got any last-minute questions, be sure to get them in here. Just 3 minutes before we go to lock here. Anthony says Morris or Powell. I would probably go Morris.
I hope he's asking Monty Morris, or if it's Monty Morris. Monty Morris is down to 3,900. He played 18 minutes last time out. Got a few extra minutes towards the end. I think they were close to playing their starters, but Monty Morris is one of those guys who comes off the bench, is a phenomenal. He never really turns over the ball that often. He's in his last 10 games, 8 games, he's only turned over the ball 3 times. He's one of those guys the coach relies off the bench to get others involved. So 18 minutes of Monty Morris versus Norman Powell, there's a price difference. It's tough. I think I'm going to roll with Monty Morris, but very hesitantly. They're close to me. I can see Powell somehow. There's a less likelihood that Powell reaches that ceiling. Monty Morris just seems a little bit more safe. So I'd go with Monty Morris. But you can't really – I know you're trying to get different there, which you have to do on a 2-game slate, but it's close. I'm going to roll with Morris.
Looking on FanDuel, Lou Williams and Marcus Smart are 2 guys that people may be looking at. I'd probably lean Marcus Smart.
Yeah, Marcus Smart in the shooting guard position, 5'7". Yeah, as we mentioned earlier in the show, can get there with steals and blocks. Lou Will is very scoring dependent. And he, last time out, finally looked like some Lou Will of his old. I mean, Lou Will is one of those guys who can get buckets in a hurry in 29 minutes to put up 16 shots. Missed all his threes. Also did get 7 assists. I like Lou Will in terms of $5,100 on point guards as their different positions. I'm going to have lineups with both for sure.
Well, let's leave on this one. Stacking Van Fleet and Lowry is a safe play.
Yeah, like I said, with their minutes, right? You can't turn down these 40-plus minutes. That's why I'm okay with doing that. Yeah, I know it's during the regular season, it'd be hard to even suggest that more times than not. You'd want to pick one. It's 2-game slate. Nick Nurse is rolling out the minutes today. So I like having that. And if people are going to shy away, it's like when you zig when other people zag. So just trying to find your way is okay. That's completely fine. And I know that will result in a more natural balance build, which is fine.
Of course, it is 6:30 here on the East Coast, which means we have hit lock here. So good luck to everyone. Ryan, man, great doing a show with you today, man. Good luck to you and all your lineups out there. Kill it tonight. And, of course, be sure to keep it locked here to Awesemo.com for all the great coverage we have there from all the sports. Be sure to check out the strategy shows tomorrow for MLB and NBA. So, Jordan, you hit that music. We'll get out of here for NBA Live Before Lock.